are stretching. If you calculate amount of blood inside different blood vessels, 65% is located inside veins. 65% of blood inside veins. Veins are capacitors, blood vessels.
Excuse me. If one person are hungry, jugular vein is stretching and jugular vein.
I don't know
Hungry.
how that's local response. It's a,
Because BP blood pressure is highest and
no,
veins
of course,
is
yes, vein,
dilation.
vein, of course, dilation. Anyway, vein has some smooth muscle. Muscle is except venous. Venous doesn't have smooth muscle. Huh? Don't have smooth muscle. Vein, large vein, all vein have some smooth muscle except venous. And this smooth muscle also have innervation, and sympathetic nervous system can increase tone of the veins, venous blood vessel, but not so effective like arterial. Well, then, next part, I will clean it. Check presence. Azizi Gami, about laminar and turbulent flow. Laminar and turbulent flow. What is it? Most vessels are maybe turn on light.
잠깐 봐.
Increase excitability of brain.
네가
Laminar and turbulent flow.
If atherosclerosis in the surface of the vein,
Yes. Not
laminar,
just vein.
every blood vessel, yes.
Blood can flow by layer with different speed. What layer is has highest
middle.
middle inside?
Yes.
Closer to blood wall,
Decrease.
the speed, velocity accelerate due to viscosity and interaction between blood particles and the wall. It's called laminar flow, laminar, by layer with different speed. And when I say it in aorta, 30 centimeters per second, it means average between different layers, total mass average between different layers during systole diastole phase, total average. But at any given moment, for example, during systole phase, medium artery can have a speed of highest middle layer about 100 centimeters per second. For example, here can flow with 100 centimeters per second. But average during systole phase, average between systole and diastole phase between different layers in this blood vessel, for example, carotid artery, will be about just 50. But one point can flow with velocity 100. It's when you analyze test exam, physical exam of blood flow velocity, Doppler method. You must understand what is the velocity. Velocity of just one point, one particle middle, or average, and compare with no. This laminar, but with highest acceleration of blood flow, and after dilation, tube dilation, laminar blood flow can be converted to turbulent flow. Turbulent flow. Turbulent flow has lower speed. So, for example, person has atherosclerosis of carotid artery, narrow part, narrow portion, and then dilation. And blood flow goes quickly across
The neuron.
constricted part, but then blood flow decelerate and turbulent. So brain doesn't have normal supply. It's problem now. And person with atherosclerosis, local problem, but a crucial problem for brain. The brain organizes behavior and control internal organs. So it's probably crucial. Difference between laminar and turbulent flow. Laminar is better and more appropriate to supply organs. Then about resistance, vascular resistance. Vascular resistance in each blood vessel may be calculated in accordance with Buazel equation. Another equation. I said this is a lot of physics.
Yeah, it's most physics.
But we must know.
Yes. We studied in the schools,
Ah,
most of it.
But anyway, I have problem with students with it.
Really?
شوف
لا 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 هذا كله ترسل هذا كله ترسل
انا عارف
Equation. Resistance equal 8 viscosity L length blood vessel divided to P R in 4 degrees. It's very important. R radius.
Diameter.
But this equation is applied to hemodynamic has limited application because this equation works for rigid tube, stable tube with continuous diameter, with just laminar flow. But our blood vessel can change diameter, constriction, dilation, due to transmural pressure, due to regulatory influence, is not constant. Right? Sometimes there is turbulent blood flow in blood vessel. So there are some limitations to apply this equation for hemodynamic, but we can use it to understand what factor influence on vascular resistance. Length, viscosity. Viscosity is a force to resist blood pressure. With viscous blood flows with less velocity. More viscosity, less velocity.
More resistance.
More resistance. Значит, more viscosity, more resistance. Значит, increase viscosity, increase resistance, and decrease velocity. Decrease velocity. What factor define blood flow or blood viscosity? Blood is colloid system to colloid system. So it depends on erythrocyte, red blood cells number,
And plasma.
Leukocytes.
and
Plasma.
proteins.
Proteins.
Inside plasma. And proteins.
If increase of our
And another factor is the blood vessel radius because it can influence on interaction between blood and blood vessel wall. When blood vessel becomes less narrow, for example, small capillaries, arterioles, viscosity increases because red blood cells connect this wall and it increases viscosity. But in the smallest blood vessel tube, viscosity can fall due to arranging smallest blood vessel, and erythrocyte blood vessels cannot go together and stick together. They go one by one, like sliding on a long layer of blood layer. It decreases viscosity. Remember, it was a Buazel equation to describe the mechanism of blood flow. Then, about blood pressure. Blood pressure control. Last part of our lecture, blood pressure. Again, I remind you that blood pressure is one of key factor, major factor providing blood flow in accordance with Ohm's law. Blood pressure very important to blood across capillaries. Blood pressure. Blood pressure depends on three major factors. It's very important skill. Blood pressure depends on systemic vascular resistance, cardiac output, heart, cardiac output, and total blood volume in the body. It's total amount of blood within blood vessels. Total blood volume. Total blood volume. Is how much blood inside our blood vessel total. Systemic vascular resistance, as I explained before, depends on length, Pearson equation, length, viscosity, diameter. What factor is more important to provide systemic vascular resistance, to make a systemic vascular resistance?
Volume of the blood vessel.
Not volume, diameter.
Diameter.
Radius. Blood vessel radius is a great factor. It's the most important factor. Radius. Blood vessel radius is the main factor. No, viscosity also. Amount of erythrocyte, erythropoiesis, hematocrit, and proteins content. Значит, no main radius to control blood pressure, especially for fast cardio.
Radius or
Radius,
diameter?
blood vessel. It's the same. Radius
diameter.
half diameter. Half diameter. Radius. No, equation use radius, therefore I say radius, but it's not important. You can say diameter. Cardiac output I explained during heart lecture. Cardiac output depends on force of contraction. Force of heart contraction. Force of pumping. And it depends also venous return. We will talk about it. It was previous lecture, but I didn't have time to explain everything. It's in accordance with Frank-Starling law. You can write here. In accordance with Frank-Starling law. It means myogenic intracardiac regulation. When more blood inflow into atria and stretch atria, then stretch ventricles. Ventricles contract with more force. It works even in separated heart, isolated heart. It's intracardiac regulation, Frank-Starling law, or in medicine it's called preload. Preload. For example, what happens? Simple case. You're sleeping, and then alarm, stand up quickly. Did you have some time problem?
Yes.
Dizziness.
Yes.
Why? Because when you stand up, gravity force decelerate velocity of blood to providing venous return. This is harder for blood to go up. It decreases venous return for a short time. It decreases force of pumping. It decreases blood pressure, and not enough blood to supply brain. You have some autonomy. Not everybody, because of immediate control, blood pressure control, adjusted and recover normal blood pressure. But if person has problem with autonomic control, autonomic nervous system due to stress, due to some other disorder, you can feel it. If you feel it, you have problem with your autonomic nervous system.
It's preload, afterload.
Preload decreases, the force of your heart compression decreases for short time until recovering due to blood pressure control system. But it's an example of significance of it.
Just depend on preload or afterload.
Afterload, what is afterload? Afterload is a resistance to blood pressure in aorta. Now, the heart must eject blood pressure against some pressure inside aorta. During physical exercise, you have more arterial pressure, and the heart has problem to eject blood because more resistance. But the heart does it without problem due to afterload mechanisms. It is afterload. Afterload shows how many tensions the heart must have to overcome blood pressure in aorta to eject enough blood. It's afterload. Address more important preload. No, total blood volume depends more from kidneys, excretion of water, and filtration of capillaries. Filtration of water and capillaries. Filtration, absorption of capillaries. Filtration, absorption. And capillaries. And kidneys, two factors. What factors from this may be changed immediately, faster, by control system? What factors?
SVR.
Yes,
sympathetic.
radius, yes.
In the sympathetic, parasympathetic.
Radius, yes, okay. But vascular resistance depends on radius and another factor from this radius. And second factor?
The kidney closure.
No, kidney slowly. Slow process. Cardiac output, fastest control with local regulation of blood vessels or local regulation, intracardiac regulation, and nerves.
In the kidney closure angiotensin, renin
It's slow,
angiotensin.
yes, but it's slower. You are right, exactly. Fastest control by two factors. Sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic, depends on the situation, parasympathetic nervous system, and local control. Local intracardiac or local control of blood vessels. Fastest control. Slow control. Influence on kidney with renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, and antidiuretic hormone,
Antidiuretic hormone.
and its antagonist, atrial natriuretic peptide. Slow control, atrial natriuretic peptide. It's antagonist of renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, and antidiuretic hormone. Slow control and slow control as angiotensin aldosterone system can influence also heart and blood vessels. Slow control system. Теперь about nervous mechanism, fastest control blood pressure. Nervous regulation of blood pressure, integral regulation, nervous regulation of blood pressure. At first, I will explain about regulation, local, systemic and local regulation of blood vessels. How we studied before, previous lecture, what about blood vessels? Blood vessel has nervous regulation and humoral regulation. Blood vessel has nervous regulation and humoral regulation. What system, autonomic division, regulates all blood vessels, all total blood vessels, sympathetic or parasympathetic?
Sympathetic.
Parasympathetic, just local, forget about parasympathetic. for this. Sympathetic system, sympathetic postganglionic fiber
هطلع
innervate each blood vessel in our body. Each blood vessel. Absolutely. What is the main neurotransmitter in sympathetic postganglionic fiber?
norepinephrine,
Norepinephrine.
noradrenaline.
Yes, no, it's the same. Yeah, norepinephrine. Receptor in synapses here, alpha adrenergic receptor. It provides vasoconstriction.
Alpha,
Constriction means decrease damage. Constriction. Here,
أيوة.
constrictor influence. I will mark constrictor influence by plus. Constriction. Constriction, decrease damage. Sympathetic system. Another factor, local regulation. Local regulation, myogenic regulation, what does it mean? When blood pressure stretches arterial blood vessel, it constricts more. More stretching, more constriction due to automatism. It's called autoregulation. Draw the graph. This graph is dependence of blood flow across blood vessels, single blood vessels, depending on stretching, stretch force. Increase blood pressure inside mean pressure, blood pressure inside blood vessels. Tube, for example, you have elastic tube, artificial elastic tube, put in the box with physiological solution, and increase pressure of solution on the walls, elastic tube. Tube will be stretch until break. But what happens with blood vessel? Blood vessel at first stretches, becomes stretches, and then stabilized, and then again
Stretch.
Q or diameter is the same. So at first, blood vessel increase diameter due to more pressure on the walls, then stabilizes diameter, and then again increase. What is a gradient? Providing stable blood flow. It depends on organ. But this mechanism works better, very good, very well, in organs require stable blood perfusion, brain, heart, and kidney to provide filtration. For example, for brain, this gradient about 150 millimeter Hg. Stable gradient. It means if brain has more blood pressure during physical exercise, anyway, brain perfusion will be stable. Or opposite, bleeding, and body loses blood, total blood, and it's dangerous, but until some blood pressure, anyway, blood circulation will be maintained, will be stable. It's very important. This factor, transmuropression, and humoral factors. What are the humoral factors? Endothelium synthesize factors, endothelium. For example, nitric oxide, endothelium. Nitric oxide dilates blood vessels, endothelium.
Nitroglycerin, such as nitroglycerin.
Yes, you are right. Nitric oxide is a very important, very essential substance, significant substance in our body, in blood vessel. It dilates, dramatically dilates. Why a doctor uses nitroglycerin to decrease blood pressure quickly? Nitroglycerin is the source for nitrogen molecule to synthesize a lot of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide dilates a lot of blood vessels. It decreases systemic vascular resistance. It decreases afterload, and it decreases force of contraction. And heart has a rest. to escape the deficiency of oxygen, to prevent ischemia.
In the hospital, if patient resistance for blood pressure, if give ample furosemide and don't decrease, take for patients TNG, nitroglycerin.
It's
Tablet
not
nitrogen.
ideal drug because nitric oxide is used in another system. Neuron can destroy some neurons, but now it's more important to rescue. And opposite hormone from endothelium, endothelin. Endothelin constricts blood vessels. Endothelin is a substance from intestine. Or extra blood vessel tissue. For example, mast cell, immune cell, increase histamine. Histamine, you know?
Yes.
Histamine increase.
Histamine, you know from
Diabetes.
digestion, but here histamine is an immune active substance. It dilates blood vessels. What about parasympathetic nervous system? Parasympathetic nervous system can innervate locally some organs, but in addition to sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system control blood pressure. Parasympathetic nervous system innervate blood vessel in oral cavity, tongue, salivary gland, some partially brains, partially lungs, heart, and sexual organs. And therapy, but locally. Control blood pressure is realized just with sympathetic influence on blood vessels. And metabolites. What happens in intensively working organ? For example, you have physical exercise for your biceps, and blood pressure in blood perfusion in biceps will rise more. Why? Because from intensively working organ muscle, skeletal muscle releases metabolites, carbon dioxide, lactate, pyruvate, ATP. Metabolites dilate blood vessels. The same happens in the tissues around teeth. When you chew it on the one side, this side has more blood circulation, including this factor. It's called functional hyperemia. Functional hyperemia is the increasing of blood circulation in intensively working organ. Due to metabolites in systemic circulation. Lungs, another thing, but now about systemic circulation in muscle, in brain structures. Okay. Skim, I think is the last because you are tired. I'm not tired, but
Yes.
In the parasympathetic acetylcholine, just
acetylcholine dilate blood vessels.
Dilate?
But acetylcholine acts not directly. Acetylcholine increase nitric oxide.
increase.
If you delete endothelium, acetylcholine will constrict blood vessels. So if blood vessel has damage of endothelium, it's crucial to increase vascular resistance. Then acetylcholine cannot dilate. Acetylcholine increase nitric oxide. In the histamine
Directly.
Directly acetylcholine constrict blood vessel, but in normal body, acetylcholine provides a release a lot of nitric oxide effect prevails. Affects more. The same histamine. Histamine acts with nitric oxide. Skim. Baroreflex artery. Baroreflex. Shortly, baroreflex. What does it mean? Is a feedback in blood pressure control. fast feedback. What I explained, if you stand up quickly, normal person with normal autonomic nervous system doesn't have problem and doesn't feel something not comfortable. Why? How does it work, right? The main integrative center controlling blood pressure is located inside medulla. It contains vasomotor zone and heart zone, heart regulation zone. Medulla. It's very important to understand how does it work. Medulla. Medulla work center here is pressure area, pressure center, pressure. But modern science doesn't use this term. Modern science, medical science, use term anatomic name of this center. I will write, but I remember just function, pressure area. In modern science, it's called RVLM, rostral, ventral, lateral, medulla. But more important to understand what is the pressure area. This pressure center increases activity of sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic. Preganglionic neuron, sympathetic nervous system activates, increase tonic activity. Every part has tonic activity, has some activity background. It becomes more or less, depends on situation. Increase sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system has a synaptic relay in sympathetic ganglia, and sympathetic ganglia innervates heart with positive influence, heart, and blood vessel. I explained now. And blood vessel. Vein and arteries both. Artery one. This signal from rostral ventral lateral medulla, pressure center, increase sympathetic influence, blood vessel constricts, systemic vascular resistance increases, and cardiac output increases, blood pressure rises. This center is controlled continuously by opposite center depressor area. Oh, sorry. Pressure area. Opposite depressor. It called in medical science caudal ventral lateral medulla. Depressor area inhibits by inhibitory neurons activity of pressor area. It's negative feedback, negative control, inhibitory control.
Yes.
Heart, large arteries, aortic arch, aorta, and arch, and carotid sinus have special receptors. Carotid sinus have special receptors sensitive to pressure. No pulse. Vamos aqui. Baroreceptors. They are primary receptor ending. They has background activity, depend on your blood pressure. Always, they have activity, background activity. Which is baroreceptor area. Primary nerve ending, sensory ending. They transmit signal in into brain across cranial nerves, valgus branch, and glossopharyngeal nerve. First neuron, afferent neurons located in ganglia, peripheral ganglia, and then it relays in the afferent nucleus. You know this nucleus. This is nucleus tractus solitarius. Famous nucleus. No?
We studied.
Salivary reflexar.
We studied.
Salivary reflexar, gustatory system, and here again. Nucleus tractus solitarius arrange signal for different reflexes. For that depends on zone. Digestive function, cardiovascular control, blood pressure control, respiration. Also, I will study later. And then it relates to depressor area. Finally, how does it work? This is simple scheme. Now simple scheme. Increase blood pressure. Case. Increase blood pressure. Increase blood pressure, more action potential here. More firing activity. More firing activity, more activity depressor area inhibit. Pressor area, sympathetic activity decreases. Understand? Sympathetic activity decreases, so blood vessel dilate, more sympathetic influence, more constriction. Less sympathetic influence, dilation. Dilates and heart has less cardiac output. But this reflex has branch to afferent parasympathetic output to heart, parasympathetic vagus, no special nucleus ambiguous, vagus nerve. It relays in the wall of atria and control atria, because parasympathetic system innervates just atria and doesn't innervate ventricle.
Heart rate, control heart rate.
Mostly heart rate, but all influences negative. Parasympathetic system decreases in force contraction, because atria has less contraction, so in accordance with Crank-Stafford law, ventricles will contract less.
If patient has a tachycardia, massage.
Yes. It stimulates massage or electrical stimulation of vagus nerve.
And
It
increase heart rate.
decreases heart rate and for force of contraction, but it's not that. With my calculation. Negative factor. So increase blood pressure, this branch, and decrease cardiac output due to vagus nerve influence on heart and decrease sympathetic activity. Opposite situation, decrease blood pressure. How does it work during decreased blood pressure? Decreased blood pressure, it decreases, reduces firing. Less activity nerves, incoming nerve, afferent nerve, less activity depressor area. Pressor area becomes more active. Sympathetic more active. Systemic vascular resistance rises, cardiac output rises, and less activity vagus. Of course, it's controlled also with local myogenic regulation, intracardiac regulation, and other reflexes, but it's main. You must know exactly. I will ask every student during colloquium this reflex. But renin-angiotensin aldosterone system, you will study yourself, because now your brain can. It's full. Yeah, I'm sure. I feel it. Well, do you have questions? Well, I will send you later, because now it's not important for the class this week. I will send later video and presentation for this.